Members of Parliament, Madam Speaker,
In this question, Mr. Joseph Musanje, Barbara Member of Parliament, wanted to ask the Minister of Community Development and Social Services whether government has any plans to ratify and domesticate the African Disability Protocol, and if so, when the plans will be implemented. And also, Water Member of Parliament, Mr. Andrew Tayengwaka, to ask the Minister of Community Development and Social Services why the government has not issued a statutory instrument to operationalize the provision of services to persons with disabilities as required by the Persons with Disabilities Act number 6 of 2012. B, whether the government has any plans to amend the Act, and if so, when the plans will be implemented.
Mr. Tayengo of Kawata also is asking the Minister of Community Development and Social Services why the government has not issued a statutory instrument to operationalize the provision of services to persons with disabilities as required by Persons with Disabilities Act number 6 of 2012. And so as soon as the quorum is constituted, business will commence. 1/3 of members of Parliament need to be present in the House in order for business to be transacted on the floor of the House. Still ahead are two motions. We do expect Dr. Chitabu Chibufya to move a motion urging the House to adopt the report of the Committee on Parastatal Bodies on the report of the Auditor General on the accounts of parastatal bodies and other statutory institutions for the financial year ended 31st December 2023 for the fourth session of the 13th National Assembly, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 23rd July 2025.
And also, Mr. Msonde is expected to move a motion urging the House to adopt the report over the Parliamentary Reforms and Modernization Committee on enhancing the participation of the public in the work of Parliament for the fourth session of the 13th National Assembly, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 22nd July 2025.
So I must mention that this particular motion will not be televised either on radio and television, either on radio, broadcast on either radio or television. It's going to be held in camera. This is according to standing orders. That's the report of the Parliamentary Reforms and Modernization Committee. So as soon as that is done, we do expect the House to consider some government bills at report stage and third reading stage. So the Border Management and Trade Facilitation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 5 of 2025, will be considered at report stage.
The National Road Fund Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2025, to be considered at a third reading stage.
So business will resume as soon as the quorum is constituted. Just now, we leave you with these live pictures from the chamber. Good morning.
Order. When business was suspended, the House was considering questions number 393 and 394 as grouped questions on the order paper asked by the Honorable Members from Mbabala and Kabwata, and the Acting Honorable Minister of Community Development and Social Services was responding to the questions. May the Honorable Minister continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Indeed, before the business was suspended, I was answering question B, when the plans of ratifying the African Disability Protocol will be implemented. And now, question C, on whether government has any plans to domesticate the protocol. Madam Speaker, I wish to clarify that the government is also mindful of the need to integrate the provisions of the African Disability Protocol into our national legal framework. This will ensure that its principles are not only acknowledged, but also actionable at the national level. And to this end, domestication of the protocol is envisaged as part of the broader review or amendment process of the Persons with Disabilities Act number 6 of 2012. Indeed, as to when the plans will be implemented, Madam Speaker, plans will be implemented during the review of the Persons with Disabilities Act, which is scheduled for 2026. It is within this review process, Madam Speaker, that the government will actively consider provisions of the African Disability Protocol for incorporation into the revised legislation. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, I wish to reaffirm that this government remains very committed to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities through both legislative action and policy reform. The ratification and eventual domestication of the African Disability Protocol will form an integral part of these efforts as we continue to promote an inclusive and rights-based approach to national development. As regards to question 394, Madam Speaker, by the Member of Parliament for Kabwata, who is also asking the Minister of Community Development and Social Services, in A, why government has not yet issued a statutory instrument, SI, to operationalize the provision of the Act. Our response, Madam Speaker, in A is that we wish to assure this august House that government remains fully committed to the full implementation of the landmark legislation. In line with this commitment, my ministry has already developed 5 draft statutory instruments, 5 draft statutory instruments to give effect to the key provisions of the Act. These instruments are designed to address the critical areas such as access to education, access to health, access to information, access to physical infrastructure and transport, and also access to employment. And following the drafting process, Madam Speaker, the proposed statutory instruments were duly submitted to the Ministry of Justice for clearance. However, we were advised to undertake further consultations due to the financial and operational implications that the regulations would have on various implementing agencies, especially that we are now in the world of fully consultations. So we were told to make sure that we consult fully so that the implementing agencies may also make an input. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to report that we have made substantial progress in this regard. Clearance has also been secured from the ministries responsible for education, transport, and logistics, information and media. and infrastructure, housing and urban development. We are currently finalizing, Madam Speaker, consultations with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. These have included, Madam Speaker, engagements with the Zambia Federation of Employers, particularly around the proposal to reserve, particularly, and I repeat, particularly, on the issue of 10% employment quota for persons with disabilities. I am happy to inform the House that this matter has been constructively addressed, and we are now awaiting the final concurrence from the Zambia Federation of Employers. A meeting to this effect was held where the matter was concluded. In addition, the Ministry of Health has provided also valuable input on the SI related to health services. These contributions are currently being incorporated to ensure that the final regulations are both practical and also very inclusive. Moreover, the Zambia Agency for Persons with Disabilities, ZAPID, developed accessibility standards through a consultative process. It was collectively agreed that the statutory instruments should be harmonized with these standards to ensure consistency in their application, and also the accessibility standards have since been finalized. Madam Speaker, government remains resolute in its efforts to operationalize the Persons with Disabilities Act in a manner that is, one, inclusive, consultative, and also sustainable. On whether the government has plans to amend the Act, Madam Speaker, I wish to confirm that your government does intend to review the Persons with Disabilities Act number 6 of 2012. This is in line with the aspirations of the 2025 National Policy for Persons with Disabilities, which recognizes the need for a strengthened legal and also institutional framework to more effectively protect the rights of persons with disabilities. This policy explicitly provides for the review, repeal, and also enactment of relevant legislation to create a more enabling environment for the full participation of persons with disabilities in all spheres of life. The last question, Madam Speaker, when the amendment process will begin. Our response, Madam Speaker, is that the process to review this Act is scheduled to commence in 2026 as indicated. This timeline allows for adequate preparation, stakeholder engagement, and alignment with the finalized accessibility standards and emerging priorities outlined in the 2025 policy. I want to conclude, Madam Speaker, by reaffirming government's unwavering commitment to ensuring that no one is left behind. We shall continue to work collaboratively with all stakeholders to ensure that the legal and policy environment in Zambia upholds the values of dignity, dignity, equality, and also inclusion for all. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary questions. The Honorable Member for Kabwata.
I am grateful, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, if you read the Act, the Disability Act of number 6 of 2012, you will discover that without the SI being signed, some of the rights the persons with disabilities are supposed to enjoy, they will not enjoy them. For instance, if you look at some of this infrastructure that we have constructed under the supervision of the Ministry of Infrastructure, some of them, they do not have access for persons with a disability. And that's the reason why people have been calling that government should operationalize the SI. Now, I just wanted to find out that in the absence of the same SI, what strategies have you put up in place to ensure that persons with disabilities enjoy their rights in the absence of this very SI we're talking about.
The Acting Minister of Community Development and Social Services.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much, Honorable Member, for that follow-up question. Madam Speaker, this is a government that is very, very sensitive to the plight of the vulnerable people in society. And I think those living with disability also fall under vulnerability. Madam Speaker, we have made some deliberate policies as a ministry and also as government. I think you are aware that this is the government that has really paid attention, even when it comes to employing of our colleagues with disability. I'm sure when the Minister of Education was employing, there was we had to take that into account, that some teachers should also be employed, those that are living with disability. That's why 10% is being contested, because even as we look at the 10%, Madam Speaker, maybe that's why Zambia Federation of Employers are also complaining, because we have not reached the 10%. Every time that we are employing, we may not find those that are qualified. It's not just a question of employing people, but also qualification also comes into play. So that's the reason why. So I'm just trying to touch that so that you understand that we have deliberate moves as government to make our colleagues comfortable, those that are living with a disability, by one, on employment. We are also now talking to those that owns infrastructure, how they can adjust. So those are issues that has made us not to promptly come up with an SI, because there are also issues of who bears the cost when you are adjusting the building, who bears the cost. So it's not something that we can just promptly do, but I think it needs a lot of consultations. Apart from that, the Honorable Member, you are aware that the President has also even appointed our colleagues who are living with disability in a lot of commissions. The first time that Zambia has really looked at our colleagues as also people that can also be part of the decision making. The President, in fact, I can even mention Chiti, who is one of those that have been employed in one of the commissions. In the Human Rights Commission, we also have such people. So these are deliberate policies as we await the coming up with an SI. So right now, we are doing a lot of consultations so that as we come up with that SI, it will be very inclusive, and I think people will be able to appreciate that SI. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kabwata.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, like I had indicated, the PWD Act number 6 of 2012 was actually enacted almost 12 to 13 years ago, and time has actually passed. We have seen so many acts that have actually been operationalized within the shortest period of time. But with this PWD Act of number 6 of 2012, we have seen that it has taken long, and the persons with disabilities out there, they are asking what could be the delay for government to sign this act, because 13 years is way too much. Look at the time when the act was actually enacted, 2012, and yet we have not seen any SI that is actually going to compel the Minister of the Minister of Education, Minister of Transport, and also Ministry of Media, to compel them so that they follow what this act is. So what could have been the delay that 13 years from the time the act was enacted, nothing yet has been done in terms of operationalizing this act? Thank you.
The Acting Minister of Community Development and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and also thank you, Honorable Member, for, again, that important follow-up question. I do agree with you, Honorable Member, that indeed the world has evolved, And when we are talking about evolution, Madam Speaker, we talk about societal progress, we also talk about culture progress, we also talk about technology, and also systems that have really advanced. I really agree with you. But I believe that, Member of Parliament, you are very much aware that in this country we have a lot of acts that are very, very old. In fact, this one is even very new, 2012. You look at the NYDC Act of 1949, look at the National Sports Council of Zambia Act of, these are very old acts, and now they have even now turned it to be a cake. So, indeed, as I said earlier, I really sympathize with our colleagues, but I believe that there is something that is being done. We have even given a time frame that come 2026, we are going to amend this important act. All we are doing now, we don't want anyone to be left behind. There's a lot of consultations, in fact, vigorous consultations, so that when the act comes, we don't want members of Parliament to start saying that, no, there was a lack of consultation. We want everyone involved to be consulted, so that as we produce this act, it will be an act that will really encompass or incorporate all major stakeholders who will be coming also to also represent their views. So I really sympathize with you, Honourable Member, and thank you for that very good heart you have towards persons living with disabilities. But something is being done, and we'll come back to this House very soon. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Mbabala.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Minister, for a very, very comprehensive answer. I wanted Mr. Minister, sorry, Madam Speaker, let me come a second. I drink water.
You are not ready?
No, I just drink water.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can call you later. The Honourable Member for Fera.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Acting Minister, Community Development. Madam Speaker, the question is very straightforward. It says, when government will operationalize the Disability Act of 2012 by issuing a statutory instrument. The Minister's response was about amendments which are expected in 2026. The Disability Act, as Honourable Member for Kawata said, there are provisions, for instance, access to buildings and the other infrastructure. That doesn't need to wait for amendments. So what would have expected is the Minister to give a clear answer, then the amendments come later. You cannot amend something which you have not operationalized. Madam Speaker, just allow me, that was just a comment. I didn't want to raise
What is your question?
So my question,
a comment?
That was a comment because I didn't want to raise a point of order.
Please go
so my
straight
question
to your
is,
question.
It's very straightforward. You say that it's government policy, you refer to policy and other things. Now I wanted to know, what you're representing government in this House, Parliament, what is your policy in appointing people who are disabled, particularly as district commissioners, permanent secretaries, foreign dignitaries such as, first secretaries and the high commissions? I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Acting Minister of Community Development and Social Services.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. And a follow-up question from Farah, Madam Speaker. I believe that the Member of Parliament was in the House when I was answering that question. I made it very clear. Madam Speaker, and I'm happy that he's asking what we are doing as government. Because we are in government, I think we needed to maybe lend some lessons to my colleague. When you come up with a policy, the policy will also attract the implementation. The policy will also now attract also amendment of some laws so that the laws now are aligned to what you intend to achieve in that particular policy. So I said the policy has been done. All we are doing now, we are now in a process of consultations. So when I talked about amendment of the Act, it is in line with what we have started doing. It's just a process that is supposed to be followed. So when you talk about, because the question was obviously in the absence of the SI, that's what he talked about. What is it that we are doing? And I clearly answered, Honorable Member for Failure, that this is the government that has a very big heart for our colleagues who are living with disability. And our colleagues can attest to that, because we are a government that has really appointed these individuals in different commissions, in different boards. It's because we have that heart for these people. So in the absence of the SI, which we are now in a process of consulting other stakeholders we feel could also play a critical role in coming up with this SI, which will not be disputed again. So very soon, and I also mentioned 2026, Madam Speaker, as timeline. So by 2026, we are going to have that SI. By then, we would have done with proper consultations. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Mbabala.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and my apologies, definitely. I was being attended to at the hospital. Honourable Minister, thank you so much for that very comprehensive question and answer. That was extremely very well informed. Now, I'm aware of the process which your ministry began, even in consultation with His Excellency President Hagen Ejirema for the person with disabilities, which is supposed to be a quarterly feedback to His Excellency, which we want to see progress. Is there a timeline or a roadmap that your ministry has put for the ratification of the African Disability Protocol in line with that protocol for feedback both to the state and to non-state actors? I thank you.
The Acting Minister of Community Development and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much, Honourable Member, for that follow-up question. Madam Speaker, this is the question in B, which is talking about when the plans will be implemented. I think it's almost the same question. So what we said was that indeed we have initiated, Madam Speaker, the process towards ratification. All we are doing now is just seeking clearance from the Attorney General. So once we get feedback from the Attorney General, definitely, Madam Speaker, we are going to make sure that it is domesticated, because this is a very progressive protocol that we should also sign as a country. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. My apologies to the remaining 3 members. We are behind time. We have 2 motions and 2 bills to consider. We make progress. Next motion, the first motion, the Honourable Member for Mansa Central.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Parastatal Bodies, on the report of the Auditor General, on the accounts of parastatal bodies and other statutory institutions for the financial year ended 31st December 2023, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 23rd July 2025.
Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Madam Speaker.
Seconded by the Honourable Member for Luena. The question is that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Parastatal Bodies, on the report of the Auditor General, on the accounts of parastatal bodies and other statutory institutions for the financial year ended 31st December 2023, for the 4th session of the 13th National Assembly, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 23rd July 2025. Any debate? The Honorable Member for Mansa Central.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with the terms of reference as contained in the Standing Orders 205 and 206 of the National Assembly Standing Orders 2024, the committee considered the report of the Auditor General on the accounts of parastatal bodies and other statutory institutions for the financial year ended 31st December 2023. The committee therefore has the rare honor and privilege to present its findings before the House. Madam Speaker, the House may wish to note that 22 entities were cited in the report of the Auditor General. In order to acquaint itself with the queries cited in the audit report, the committee interacted with various controlling officers of the cited entities who tendered both written and oral submissions. Madam, I would like to believe that members of this august House have already perused through this committee's report, and on that premise I will endeavor to highlight only a few pertinent issues that emanated from the committee's deliberations. Madam Speaker, the committee observes with deep concern the persistent weaknesses in corporate governance, inter alia absence of boards of directors across several public institutions and statutory bodies. As you may be already aware, effective governance is the cornerstone of sound institutional performance. Therefore, compromised governance regrettably paves the way for mismanagement, inefficiency, and a troubling lack of accountability. Madam Speaker, of note, institutions such as NAPSA, Workman Compensation, Kafubu Water and Sanitation, Mulonga Water and Sanitation Companies had no boards. I'll focus on Levi Mwanawasa Medical University. Madam Speaker, the committee is concerned that Levi Mwanawasa Medical University continues to operate without a full council. This does not only contravene the provisions of the Higher Education Act No. 4 of 2013, but also presents a significant governance vacuum. The committee therefore strongly urges the controlling officers in the Ministry of Health and Education to take immediate steps to address this gross governance gap and ensure compliance with the law. The committee further urges respective controlling officers to ensure boards are constituted at NAPSA, Workman Compensation, Kafu and Mulonga Water Companies. Madam Speaker, the committee also observes that several institutions failed to meet their obligations regarding payment of terminal benefits to former employees. The affected institutions and corresponding outstanding amounts are as follows. The Zambia Postal Services Corporation, with an outstanding balance of 118.56 million kwacha. The National Housing Authority, 9.7 million kwacha. The Local Authority Superannuation Fund, LASIF, 190.67 million kwacha. Madam Speaker, the failure to meet this important obligation has caused considerable financial hardships among its retirees, many of whom solely rely on these benefits for their livelihoods. Moreover, the continued non-payment exposes these institutions to potential legal claims and reputational damage. The committee strongly urges the controlling officers at the Ministries of Technology and Science, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, Local Government and Rural Development to prioritize the settlement of these obligations and to establish sustainable mechanisms to prevent the accumulation of arrears in the future. Madam Speaker, another serious anomaly the committee noted was the significant failure in revenue collection across several key public institutions. Notably, the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, recorded uncollected revenues amounting to 430.2 million kwacha, while the Local Authority Superannuation Fund failed to collect 228.8 million kwacha. These figures, Madam Speaker, point to a systemic breakdown in debt recovery mechanisms, weaknesses in internal controls, and a general lack of enforcement of financial discipline. As this House is aware, the failure to collect revenue that is duly owed not only jeopardizes the financial sustainability of the affected institutions, but also erodes the government's fiscal space. This limits the ability of the government to fund essential public services such as health, education, and infrastructure. In this regard, the committee strongly urges the relevant controlling officers to enhance revenue collection, enforce accountability, and take immediate corrective actions to safeguard public resources. Madam Speaker, let me briefly comment on the committee's benchmarking tour to the Republic of Kenya, where the committee was privileged to visit the Inspectorate of State Corporations. This institution is responsible for monitoring governance and operational efficiency across state-owned enterprises. The Inspectorate conducts investigations, recommends surcharges where necessary, and works in close collaboration with anti-corruption agencies to uphold integrity and accountability within public institutions. The committee recommends that the government considers establishing an independent inspectorate which should operate in similar lines as that of Kenya. Such a body should be given a clear mandate of inspecting, evaluating, and enforcing good governance across all state enterprises. This measure is expected to enhance institutional compliance, deter misuse of public resources, and contribute significantly to restoring public confidence. Madam Speaker, I wish on behalf of the committee to urge all controlling officers to ensure that all statutory bodies promulgated under the various laws have functional and competent boards at all times. Madam Speaker, I further urge the committee, the controlling officers for respective institutions to ensure that there is improved efficiencies, accountability, profitability, and value creation in their respective institutions. May I now express profuse gratitude to all stakeholders that contributed to the production of this report. Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak now or later?
Now, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Luena.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to second the report that has been ably moved by the Chair of the Committee, the Honorable Member for Mansa Central. Madam Speaker, the report that has just been moved is indeed a bulk report, as it looked at the accounts of over 20 parastatals, and it goes into 200 plus pages. Therefore, in seconding the report, Madam Speaker, I will just stick to a few areas that have not been covered by the Chair in moving the report. Madam Speaker, in carrying out our mandate as a committee, we undertook tours to water utility companies in Luapula, Copperbelt, and here in Lusaka. And that included the Water Supply Regulator, NWASCO, the National Water Supply and Sanitation Council, which is a creature of the Water Supply Act, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are two areas of concern that I would like to highlight in my debate. The first one with the water utility companies is the high incidence of non-revenue water. Madam Speaker, non-revenue water, for those who might not be familiar with the concept, simply means water that is actually treated and transported through the water supply system but is not billed, which means a lot of expenses are incurred in abstracting this water and delivering it to consumers. But somewhere in between the consumer, in between the abstraction point and the consumers, this water is lost. This is mostly due to dilapidated infrastructure and therefore high leakages and sometimes system challenges. This is costing water utility companies a lot of money and is making it difficult, if not impossible, for them to service the communities adequately in terms of water supply. The second issue, Madam Speaker, that we identified as a committee is the issue of low water tariffs. Madam Speaker, this problem has been with us for a while because there is an issue with the legal framework in terms of the power to approve the water tariffs. As it sits in the law at the moment, it suggests that the National Water Supply and Sanitation Council has the power to develop the guidelines and therefore to approve the tariffs on application from these commercial utilities. But the practice is that once those guidelines are developed and the tariffs are considered from the water utility companies, they are submitted, or the proposal is submitted to Cabinet. And from our interaction with NOASCO, we learned that for many, many years now, there has not been any approval from the Cabinet to allow these water utility companies to apply cost-reflective tariffs. This means the cost of abstracting and delivering water to consumers, Madam Speaker, continues to be higher than the rate at which customers or consumers are billed. That is indeed not sustainable, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this report also includes our findings on the other parastatals. And in the parastatal sector, Madam Speaker, your committee was privileged to undertake a tour to the Republic of Kenya, where we looked at how they manage their parastatal sector. And one of the issues we identified as a committee was the perennial problem of financing parastatals. And what we discovered is that in Kenya, they have deployed a model similar to ours, which is having a development finance institution. In our case, it was the Development Bank of Zambia, which is in liquidation. In their case, their dedicated financing institution is still operational, and they are even putting more money into it so that the parastatal sector, which is a major engine of industrializing an economy, can be enhanced and can be more productive and create more job opportunities for their people. The committee therefore recommends that the government hastens to revive the Development Bank of Zambia or replace it with another institution, of course with some modifications here and there to ensure that it operates more efficiently and more effectively. Still on the parastatal sector, Madam Speaker, your committee noted the issue of the legal framework within which our parastatals operate. Madam Speaker, our parastatals have their origins in the Constitution, and in terms of their operations, we have the Companies Act, we also have the Public Financial Management Act, we also have the Zambia Public Procurement Act, and the other laws. Madam Speaker, some of these laws, well intended as they were in terms of how they apply to the parastatals, have become impediments in the operations of these parastatals. For example, we have entities that are supposed to procure through the government procurement system, which is the EGP. But their competitors out there make these procurement decisions within 24 hours and they procure. We are in the age of technology, where an entity such as Zamtel has to compete with the other entities such as Airtel and MTN, who have got a very short turnaround when it comes to responding to market exigencies out there. Whereas Zamtel, because it's a parastatal, has to be in compliance with these many laws and regulations. So your committee, Madam Speaker, recommends that the quicker the government will look at the state-owned entities sector in order to come up with a new act, which we understand, and the committee was informed that there's a state-owned entities act that is in the pipeline, that it will be necessary that when that act is brought to Parliament, we really look at how we allow these entities to be competitive. Yes, the money that is invested in this entity is public money, but if we want them to be viable, they have to be allowed to compete with other entities out there with the same within the same regulatory framework. Madam Speaker, We also noted that some of these entities have a challenge of multiple reporting channels. So we have an entity that falls under IDC, but also there is no Chinese wall between this entity and the ministry that is responsible for the sector where it operates. That means the ministry still operates as a parent ministry and from time to time makes decisions on behalf of that entity, which in some instances even the board and management of that parastatal entity would not have been aware of. And that creates a lot of operational problems for some of these entities. So we think streamlining the legal framework as well as the management structure, hiving off these entities so that they are completely under IDC, or if they are supposed to be independent entities, they are so independent, will enhance their efficiency and their productivity, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in winding up my seconding of this report, allow me to join the mover of the motion to adopt this report of the committee in thanking you, Madam Speaker, for according us the opportunity to serve on this important committee. I also wish to thank the members of your committee for according me the opportunity to second the motion. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Any further debate? The Honourable Member for Chimwemwe.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. May I also take this opportunity to thank the mover and the seconder of the motion. Madam Speaker, I will be brief and concise. I'll start by looking at CEEC. Madam Speaker, your committee has pointed out that CEEC's capital base is insufficient, or let me call it bank capital. Madam Speaker, we know that CEC has been operating since 2008. Madam Speaker, we expect CEC to be self-sufficient by now. But Madam Speaker, if they can be struggling to have capital base, and when they ask the Treasury, because your committee is put up, they ask the Treasury is actually dragging its feet. Madam Speaker, we cannot blame the Treasury Secretary, because truly, Madam Speaker, we expect this institution, Madam Speaker, to make its own money, or at least to up its game by recoveries. Madam Speaker, one thing we need to know is this institution, Madam Speaker, the most clients that it has, it's people like me, politicians. Madam Speaker, we need a CEO who's going to be there, a CEO who just won't be changed each time we have a new government in place. Madam Speaker, his security of tenure should be guaranteed. Madam Speaker, is a person that's supposed to know who the clients are, how we politicians operate, how we do not like paying back what we get, how we always love to believe that whatever we take in terms of loans, Madam Speaker, is a free gift. Madam Speaker, absence of duration clause on the loan processing stage. Madam Speaker, CEC is blaming the late disbursement of funds from the Treasury. Madam Speaker, it doesn't matter what the reason is. Madam Speaker, but this clause definitely needs to be there. This, Madam Speaker, clause helps the client to understand when the money will be dispersed, when the money will be paid back. Madam Speaker, the institution, Madam Speaker, can actually take a leaf from other financial institutions where they ensure that the loan drawdown time is within 6 months. Madam Speaker, this clause has to be there. There cannot be any exceptions or excuses. Clients have a right, Madam Speaker, to know when the money will be dispersed, because they're planning and budgeting, and they need to know when the pay off, or let me say the loan tenure is. Madam Speaker, look at the non-performing loans. Madam Speaker, CEC is complaining of non-performing loans, and they're saying some of them have gone beyond 6 years, which is statute barred. I'm happy, Madam Speaker, that the Attorney General has actually clarified that any loan, Madam Speaker, where the assets is land but related, Madam Speaker, is 12 years. Madam Speaker, what we've got to know is they've got options for non-performing loans, Madam Speaker. They could either extend the expiry period, Madam Speaker, before it comes to an end, or, Madam Speaker, they can actually refer the same loan, Madam Speaker, to loan recovery unit, because, Madam Speaker, those are some of the options that they have before them. Madam Speaker, another very interesting point, Madam Speaker, is failure to reconcile suspense accounts. Madam Speaker, suspense account is supposed to be a temporary account. But Speaker, they cannot complain of lack of human capital. But Speaker, the CEC sits in Lusaka. Lusaka is surrounded by most universities, most colleges that offer accounting courses. But Speaker, an institution like CEC should take advantage of the interns. But Speaker, most companies do that. You do not have the capacity to hire on. But Speaker, you can use the interns whenever the interns are on break. But Speaker, this is part of the program. But Speaker, so the idea of complaining over human capital, Mr. Speaker, does not hold any water. Mr. Speaker, when you go to page 8, repossessed assets, Mr. Speaker, it's very funny and baffling to note that CEC, Mr. Speaker, has identified 25 assets, Mr. Speaker, and it says unknown. What sort of institution are they running? What sort of record keeping do they have, Mr. Speaker, not to know where the 25 assets are? Have they been repossessed, Mr. Speaker? Are they still with them? Are they? Mr. Speaker, it looks like CEC is not even serious, and this is public money. Mr. Speaker, failure to recover loan amounts from the sale of assets. But Mr. Speaker, this is very, very funny as well. And Mr. Speaker, it only shows that CEC is not really serious. How do you, Mr. Speaker, allow an asset to be pledged as collateral without actually checking its value? But Mr. Speaker, there's what we call loan-to-value ratio, which is abbreviated as LTV. But Mr. Speaker, this is a ratio that will show you the value of an asset, whether it exceeds, Mr. Speaker, or it meets the loan value. So, Mr. Speaker, just using that ratio, Mr. Speaker, the asset, Mr. Speaker, should be able to pay back, Mr. Speaker, whatever you received. Because, Mr. Speaker, that's why we call these guarantees. Mr. Speaker, I'll go to Levi Monawasa Medical University, Mr. Speaker. This is also a very interesting issue. Missing payment vouchers, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when vouchers are missing, Madam Speaker, this is theft. There's nothing else, Madam Speaker. This is theft. This is very disappointing and very unfair. I'm looking at this young teenager in Chumwema, Madam Speaker, who steals a chicken just to feed his siblings at home because this is a house that is led by a teenage boy, Madam Speaker. He goes to prison for so many years. And he had 4 grown-up men, Madam Speaker, who, I don't know whether they shredded it or stole it or burnt the payment voucher, Madam Speaker, and go off just like that. What does the commission do, Madam Speaker? They are just let off, Madam Speaker, fired. They don't even face any consequences. And that young man in Chumwema, Madam Speaker, who stole a chicken, he did actually convert it into cash. He actually used it to feed his family. He's serving so many years in prison, Madam Speaker. This is very, very unfair. Look at NAMS, Madam Speaker. Low return on the real estate. Of course, Madam Speaker, there's something fishy. How do you construct buildings or houses, Madam Speaker, that at the end of the day, nobody wants to buy them? Madam Speaker, because everybody has noticed that at NAPS, Madam Speaker, there's something cooking. Madam Speaker, the value of those houses actually double the cost of a house that you can build. Most people, Madam Speaker, do not even want to buy them. Where you're offered to pay for them for 10 years. But as Speaker, nobody wants to buy them because you'll be wasting your money. Instead of buying 2 properties, you're buying 1 property. So it's either, Madam Speaker, there's an inside job where they connive with the contractors, you know, just to uplift the prices of the project, Madam Speaker, and in the end, Madam Speaker, they don't care because that money doesn't belong to them, it's government money. That's how, Madam Speaker, we waste money in our country. Madam Speaker, that's why sometimes we are not even improving when it comes to development. Madam Speaker, with those few words, Madam Speaker, I support your committee's report. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Chama North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for according the people of Chama North an opportunity just to briefly make some comments on the report on parastatal bodies. Madam Speaker, if you look at the report, it clearly tells that almost all state enterprises are not doing fine in this country, which is a very, very sad development. I believe that if these state-owned enterprises were well managed, they should have been contributing significantly to gross domestic product and also creating jobs. Dr. Claes Kaunda and his comrades created these state-owned enterprises as a way to promote industrial revolution in this country. But unfortunately, these companies are not doing very, very well. Madam Speaker, every year the Committee on Parastatal Bodies come before this August House. We talk about the same things. Even next year, it will be the same things, irregularities, failure to manage these state enterprises. So I think the ball is in our court as leaders, that as long as we don't take radical measures and ensure that these state-owned enterprises started operating purely as business entities, then we are not going anywhere. I know that the poor performance of parastatals is largely due to poor management. The way people are appointed, the way chief executive officers are appointed to run these particular state enterprises. We don't even see advocates. Why don't we allow the best Zambians to apply for these jobs? But unfortunately, we just hear Soso has been appointed managing director in this company, Soso has been appointed the MD, just like that. When we have Zambians who are able actually to run these parastatals to greater heights. I will state the truth. I think all the governments which have come just after UNIP, it's the same thing. There's no corporate good governance in the way we are appointing people to run these parastatals. Madam Speaker, quickly I go to Zambia Railways. In the report, we are told that Zambia Railways is performing very poorly because of deteriorating rail infrastructure, shortage of wagons and locomotives. When many countries, even here on the continent, are modernizing their railway system, as we are still very far to achieve that. Today our roads are being damaged. Copper is always moving on our roads, and a lot of money is being spent to tar these roads. But these roads do not stay long because the heavy roads are using our roads instead of using Zambia Railways and also Tazara. Look, if we go to Tanzania, Ethiopia, and several other countries in Africa, I think we have done very well in terms of modernizing their railway infrastructure. Yes, today you can say, no, the government has got no money, but we have got the resources. We have got the natural resources which we can exploit and invest in Zambia Railways. Recently, I was listening to the former managing director of Zambia Railways, Professor Clive Chirwa, who was saying that to modernize the railway sector in this country, we need more than $1 billion. We need more than $1 billion. We want to see that Zambia should also have speed trains, the way it is happening in other countries. Then you see that most of this cargo will be moving by rail. Quickly, I go to LASIF. Madam Speaker, it's very, very sad that the government has not taking radical decisions as quickly as possible to bring pension reforms before this August House. We are aware that LASIF stopped receiving new members in the year 2000 when NAPSA was created. You cannot sustain a pension scheme where you don't recruit new members, because those new members are the ones who are going to finance payroll benefits for those who are leaving. From 2000 up to this time, LASIF has not been receiving new members, and I think last time the Minister of Local Government came on this August House that there's going to be an amendment to the Act so that LASIF can start receiving new members and to compete with NAPSA. As a result, most of the retirees, Madam Speaker, don't get their retirement benefits for years. Because of the status of LASIF. It's very, very sad that surely up to this time there's no board of directors at LASIF. What is the problem? In the report we are told that Cabinet approved the new board in March 2025. This is July. So what is the problem really to appoint board directors? So these are the challenges these companies are facing. And I want to make an appeal that as the minister is appointing the board of directors, let's appoint people who are going to add value to these companies. The problem is that these boards are used we want us to give jobs. They are not just there to receive allowances, but I think we must have people who have the business mind to be able to supervise the management. So I say that the minister must, as quickly as possible, ensure that the LASIF board is appointed without further delay. In the report also it says that there are only two companies, ZESCO and the Lusaka Water and Sewerage, Lusaka Water, who are current with remittance to LASIF, but the majority of these local authorities are not able to remit their monthly contribution. So with these few remarks, I want to state that I support adoption of this report. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Namala is on the report. We'll take the Honorable Member for Zambezi East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to debate the motion that is on the floor of the House, which is the report of your committee on parastatal bodies, chaired by Honorable Dr. Chilufya. Madam Speaker, I'm elated to have this opportunity to debate this motion because I'm passionately connected to that committee, being my immediate past committee. Therefore, I have institutional memory within me, having passed that committee, through that committee, and being the past chairperson for that committee. Madam Speaker, I'll go straight to the salient issues raised by the chairperson of the committee, contained in the report of the Committee on Parastatal Bodies. And I think each report that has been presented on the floor of the House has brought out these issues. And it appears these issues are now becoming perennial, and it appears we have considered it as business as usual. However, I'm also pleased that a lot of interventions have been made by the UPND government to try and correct the situation. However, the milestones that have been achieved will only show probably after a few years from now. Madam Speaker, the chairperson of the committee, in his address to the House and the nation at large, lamented about the lack of corporate governance. And indeed, a lack of corporate governance is one of the tenets that causes underperformance in these parastatal bodies. He gave an example of the university, the Levi Mwanawasa Medical University, which is operating without, at the time of the audit, which was operating without a council. And a similar situation was actually true for most of the public universities at the outset. But I'm glad to see that only one is being singled out this time. Because at the time I was presenting a similar report, at the time like this one, last year, we had actually a number of them, and there were lamentations of having no councils in these public universities. And it actually compelled the committee to even go as further as calling stakeholders who are supposed to be involved in ensuring that the scanning of these people who are supposed to be appointed to these boards was expeditiously done. And it appears some milestones are being recorded here to see to it that we only have only one being complained about. However, in parastatal bodies, we still have that challenge. And some of them still have gaps of boards in place, including these water utility companies. However, I think the ministers concerned are aware, and this issue was flagged last year. And I can see most of them actually complied with this. Where there are challenges, it's just some one-off situations concerning corporate governance. Madam Speaker, corporate governance is very important in any institution, and in parastatals, it is even overemphasized, because without which we will have these institutions which will just be run by management. And when management is not checked on whatever decisions they make, it becomes free for all. And that's the reason why we have these financial flaws being reported by the Auditor General when corporate governance is not emphasized. Madam Speaker, to be specific, of course, I mentioned about the Levy Monawasa case, which is now one in many which used to be at that time when I was still in that committee. Madam Speaker, the chairperson of the committee also lamented about the chronic problem of paying terminal benefits. This problem has been chronic, and mainly this stems from institutions that are underperforming. It's not in their wish that they should not pay the terminal benefits. The fact is that there are no funds to pay the terminal benefits. So we need to get to the root of the problem. I can give a point in case of the University of Zambia. There is quite a lot still sitting on their books as unpaid terminal benefits. But again, that also boils down to what conditions of service have we allowed these institutions to have. Some institutions, due to lack of corporate governance, we need to be connecting these problems. You see, without proper corporate governance, institutions come up with whatever they wish in terms of conditions of service. And without the approval, those conditions of service, before we know it, they are in people's contracts. And then, if these conditions of service are such that the institution cannot sustain meeting those conditions of service, we end up having a backlog of unpaid allowances, unpaid terminal benefits. When you look at it, people are owed as far big as even 20 million kwacha. Such kind of money which some of us would not even earn, even if we did 3 terms in this parliament. So it's such kind of things. So we need to emphasize the issue of corporate governance. And I like it that there is that commission which was actually formed, which is looking at some of these things to harmonize. What do you call that commission? It's a Public Service Commission? Or what is that commission? The Emoluments Commission. The Emoluments Commission now comes in because some of these issues are stemming from these imbalances. Some institutions had overboard conditions of service. And that's the reason why we have these funds still remaining as a date to these employees who have separated from institutions because of lack of corporate governance. Madam Speaker, I also wish to talk about revenue collection. And I did, indeed, the local superannuation fund authority has been mentioned in here. But we all know why that backlog still exists. It's not in their wish that they could not collect the funds, but salaries could not just be paid. So people were not paid salaries, so you cannot deduct. Or whatever money they had was too little to pay both the statutory obligation, which are the pension amount, and the net pay. So they prioritized paying the net pay. So now that the councils are being financed, I believe that the superannuation fund is now getting healthier. So we can actually draw a line and see the difference between the past and the current parastatals. And I can see light at the end of the tunnel in the way the UPND government is managing things. Madam Speaker, with these few words, I wish to contribute to the motion and support the report of your committee on parastatal bodies for adoption by the House. I thank you.
The Honorable Member for Kaumbwe.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for allowing the people of Kaumbwe to echo their voice on the report on the table on parastatal bodies and other statutory institutions. From the onset, the Auditor General's report on these parastatal organizations, parastatal institutions and the statutory institutions shows that there are several challenges ranging from lack of financing and mismanagement of public resources, up to lack of internal controls. The Auditor General would do an audit and send the audit report, the draft audit report, to these institutions, the parastatal bodies. In this case, there are more than 22 parastatal bodies. These parastatal bodies, the controlling officers and the CEOs would confirm the audit query and then have an opportunity to respond and interact with the committee that has ably moved this motion. The common trend, like in many audits, is that the controlling officers and CEOs are not taking these audit processes seriously, because it becomes business as usual. When an audit query is posed, they would not even produce documentary evidence to justify their action, because it ends up in, it was an oversight. They just say it was an oversight, and we will look at measures on how to control that in future. Going forward, we will achieve zero audit queries. I'll give just a few examples, because of course the report is bulky, and so many parastatal institutions. I'll start with CEEC. CEEC, Citizens Economic Empowerment Commission. Citizens Empowerment Commission is empowered, is mandated to avail cheap finances to our citizens for promotion of SMEs. Madam Speaker, during the audit period or the financial year, the budget by CEEC was 4,281,774,620. This budget, against this budget, they only received 8.5%, which translates to 362,199,777 against 4 billion. This money is supposed to fund 110,765 to address these applications for loans. How would the CEC carry their mandate with such a meager funding? Furthermore, the operational challenges, lack of transport, limitations in human resources, inadequate office space, and so on. The operation funds that CEC requires is 477,381 in a year. They only received 35 million kwacha, which is 7% of that. Of course, the funding challenges hinder service delivery. I'll go to NRFA. NRFA, the budget and funding shows a positive variance of 8,479,074. Out of this amount of money, they received 328,661, 145, and 1,408 euros from cooperating partners for funding of improved rural connectivity road projects, IRCP. These funding from external partners were supposed to pay for payments towards Chisali Nakonde Road, Luangwa to Nyimba Road. Madam Speaker, when I look at the recommendations by the committee on page 75, it shows that they recommended that the matter be closed, pending subject to audit verification. We I'm amazed to see that during the fiscal year 2023, NRFA received 328 million US dollar, also 1,408 euros towards 3 projects: the improved rural connectivity, Chinsari to Nakonde Road, and Luangwa to Inyimba Road. But Luangwa to Inyimba Road, of which NRFA received these funds in 2023, I never saw, and there's no any rehabilitation works that have been executed on that particular road. Only an emergency repair of a bridge which is at kilometer 257. Well, the committee recommends that it must go for audit queries, for audit verification. The NRFA is mandated to mobilize resources for road maintenance and new road rehabilitation works. NRFA, with the opportunities that they have through cooperating partners such as Danida, World Bank, and so on, we lose an opportunity. I'll give an example of, because the main source of NRFA is toll collections on our toll gates. Toll collections on our toll gates, an example is the Lusaka-Ndola dual carriageway. The Lusaka-Ndola dual carriageway is a project that is done under PPPP, and NRFA was collecting the tolls. Towards last year, before the contractor has even finished the construction of the road, before he starts collecting the tolls, NRFA has given out those toll gates to the concessionaire. Meaning that the resource basket to maintain our roads countrywide is reduced, because a PPP project is expected that a concessionaire should have financial muscle. There must be a financial closure before implementing the project. Why then the contractor, the concessionaire, who had the financial closure before doing the road, in the process is given the toll gates to run the tolls? That is the problem that NRFA should have actually looked into, to continue mobilize resources for our roads. We wish the same action that has happened.
Time is up, Honorable Member.
Well, with these few words, I support the report, and I take the recommendations as mine.
Thank you. The Minister of Green Economy and Environment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to express my profound gratitude for this opportunity to respond to the insightful report presented by the committee on parastatal bodies regarding the Auditor General's report on the accounts of parastatal bodies and other statutory institutions for the financial year ended 31st December 2023. Madam Speaker, allow me to extend my sincere appreciation to the committee for the diligent work and indeed constructive oversight. The observations and recommendations contained in the report are not only timely but also critical to our collective efforts in strengthening transparency, accountability, and performance within public institutions, particularly in the water and sanitation sector. In addition, Madam Speaker, I wish to appreciate the mover of the motion, Honorable Chitaluchirufya, and the seconder, Honorable Anakoka, as well as your members, among them Honorable Alan Banda, Honorable Mtayachalo, Honorable Kambita, Honorable Aaron Mwanza, for ably debating the motion. Madam Speaker, sound financial management practices are indispensable for the successful implementation and sustainability of water supply and sanitation projects. These practices ensure that resources are optimally allocated and that the public derives full value from every kwacha invested. In this regard, I wish to highlight the measures that my ministry is undertaking in response to the issues raised in the Auditor General's report, and to reaffirm our resolve to work collaboratively with all stakeholders to address any weaknesses identified, enhance internal controls, and ensure full compliance with relevant financial and operational regulations. Madam Speaker, regarding the committee's concern on the high levels of non-revenue water among commercial utilities, my ministry developed a national non-revenue water management strategy aimed at the following: establishing dedicated non-revenue water units within each commercial utility, accelerating universal metering under ongoing and upcoming infrastructure projects, providing targeted capacity building to strengthen utility-level technical competences in non-revenue water management, piloting smart water loss detection technologies, and enhancing performance monitoring and enforcement of non-revenue water targets through NWASCO. Furthermore, the ministry has put in place a national technical task force to spearhead non-revenue water management in the sector. We reaffirm our commitment to achieving the NWASCO benchmark of 25% or lower by 2030. Madam Speaker, on tariff adjustments, the ministry is working with the Ministry of Justice and NWASCO to review the Water Supply and Sanitation Act No. 28 of 1997. The revised act will explicitly designate NWASCO as the competent authority to approve cost recovery tariffs while safeguarding affordability for vulnerable populations. Madam Speaker, on vandalism and theft of water and sanitation installations, the ministry has intensified public awareness campaigns by rolling out smart metering systems in high-risk areas. The ministry is also working closely with the Zambia Police Service and the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development to strengthen legal enforcement and community surveillance networks, fostering public ownership and protection of water assets. Madam Speaker, regarding metering ratio, the ministry has made it a policy requirement for all new infrastructure projects, such as the Integrated Small Towns Water Supply and Sanitation Project, currently being implemented, to incorporate metering at the design and implementation stages. NWASCO has been directed to enforce this as a mandatory requirement for project approvals and performance evaluations. Further, we are leveraging support from cooperating partners to procure additional meters and install prepaid systems to meet the 100% metering benchmark by the year 2027. Madam Speaker, concerning the infrastructure maintenance of Mulonga Water and Sanitation Company, the ministry, through the Zambia Water Supply and Sanitation Project, has earmarked funds for infrastructure rehabilitation at the utility offices. A specific maintenance and upgrading plan has been developed. Madam Speaker, on the absence of boards of directors at Mulonga and the Kafubu Water Supply and Sanitation Companies, the ministry has concluded the appointment of boards of directors and has since submitted a cabinet memorandum for consideration by cabinet. The boards will be unveiled as soon as cabinet takes note of the recommendation. Madam Speaker, regarding the poor state of properties at Kafubu Water and Sanitation Company, the ministry has completed the technical assessment of 39 properties at Kafubu Dam and developed a phased maintenance and rehabilitation plan. Implementation is expected to commence in the year 2026 fiscal year, subject to resource availability. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, I wish to reaffirm the Ministry's commitment to strengthening governance, operational efficiency, and financial sustainability across all water and sanitation institutions. We take the committee's observations seriously and are actively implementing measures to address the identified challenges. The Ministry remains open to continued engagement with the committee and the other oversight bodies as we work collectively to deliver equitable, safe, and sustainable water and sanitation services for all Zambians. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to start off by commending the committee for the work that they've done, highlighting all the difficulties that they've indicated. Madam Speaker, the government is committed to, or let me say, government has developed a new performance management framework which is expected to provide for performance against targets in the state-owned enterprises. Let me state that this government is also committed to the restoration of efficiency and effectiveness in the manner in which all government contracts are managed. In order to achieve this, government is embarked on the implementation of the following. 1, continue orienting boards of directors for parastatals and statutory institutions in the public finance legislations to enable them to participate effectively in the drawing up and the placement of effective internal controls in procurement processes. And 2, taking immediate, effective, and appropriate disciplinary steps against erring office holders in ministries, provinces, and other agencies. I would like to indicate to the House that the Treasury, the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry, Ministry of Education, IDC, and other stakeholders will closely review the committee's observations and the recommendations, and a comprehensive report on the progress of the pertinent issues raised by the committee will be availed to the House. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Mansa Central wind-up debate.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank all the debaters who have contributed to this motion, and salient amongst the contributions that the debaters have given is pointing towards the epidemic of corporate management failure. The decent response from the Ministries of Finance, Ministers of Finance and Environment are very encouraging and gives hope that we will address matters to do with corporate governance, particularly lack of boards, with resultant poor oversight and poor financing, and also the perennial wanton disregard for accounting processes. Madam Speaker, the committee is confident that with effective engagement between all stakeholders, the executive and the committee, there shall be improved corporate governance of these institutions, and there shall be value creation, improved profitability, and enhanced efficiencies in these parastatal bodies so that we could have enhanced revenue to contribute to national development. Madam Speaker, I thank everyone for supporting this motion, and I beg that all members of Parliament support this report. I submit.
Thank you. I put the question. The question is that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Parastatal Bodies, on the report of the Auditor General, on the accounts of parastatal bodies and other statutory institutions for the financial year ended 31st December 2023, for the fourth session of the 13th National Assembly, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 23rd July 2025. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The question is resolved in the affirmative. I have an announcement before we move to the next motion. Honorable members, as earlier announced by Honorable Madam Speaker, Article 89(2) of the Constitution of Zambia requires the National Assembly not to exclude the public or the media from its sittings unless there is justifiable reasons to do so. As you are already aware, honorable members, the Parliamentary Reforms and Modernization Committee is classified under the National Assembly of the Zambia Standing Orders for 2024 as a housekeeping committee, as it deals with in-house matters hinging on the powers, privileges, procedures, and practices, organization, and facilities of the Assembly. For this reason, the debate on the report of the committee, which the House is about to consider, will be held in camera. In view of the foregoing, I direct all members of the public and the media to leave the House. I further direct that broadcasting all the proceedings on Parliament Radio, television, and social media be suspended during the debate of the report. I thank you. Next motion, the Honorable Member for Chimba Bilonga.